Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Monday night true crime docket from Courtney Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here. It is December 1st, 2025. Can you guys believe that we are, 30 days away from 2026? That somebody pointed that out to me. Not that the math is all that difficult to do, but somebody pointed that out to me today. And it blew my mind. It seems like 2026 snuck up on us. I feel like I just got used to writing 2025 on my dates, and now it's already 2026. It's been a wild year. It's continuing to be a wild year. We're actually going to kind of talk about in one of these episodes coming up soon. This is kind of an unplanned announcement, but we're going to be talking about some of the things that you should look forward to in 2026, but we're not there yet. So stay on task, Ritter. First of all, thank you everybody for being here on a Monday. As you can tell, I'm not in my normal, wonderful home studio. I'm away. I'm in New York. I'm in my hotel room. I'm a little tired. It's been a long day, but I'm very glad to be here with all of you. Hello to Crazy Mary. Hold on. Crazy Mary Joe and Joanna Moore and Anna Banana. Moments in Trading, Jojo Tink RN. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you were able to carve out some time on your Monday evening to be with us. If you're returning, welcome back. You know what you're in store for. We're going to talk about all things true crime coming up this week. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you decided to join us on this Monday evening, and I think you're going to be very happy that you did. But let me introduce who I am. First of all, my name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I left there to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And this is Courtroom Confidential. We started this channel with the aspiration, the mission statement of presenting to you both sides of the courtroom. And we hope that we do that. And this is our Monday night true crime docket, where we talk about everything that you have to expect in the coming week. And there's a lot for us to go over today. First of all, a trial started today with Brian Walshe. A big hearing started today with Luigi Mangione. And there's a couple of other cases coming up this week, including cases that took place last week during the holidays. There's some updates to share with you there as well. So stay tuned to the very end. As always, we have announcements for you. Lots of stuff that we want to share with you coming up this week. But take a moment, take a deep breath, let in all the good air, let out all the bad air. Hit those like buttons, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's go ahead and jump in. First, last week, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, I think I'm doing okay. Last week, in the David Celeste Rivas saga, this is the singer David. Also, real name is David Anthony Burke. He's being now, I guess you could say, officially investigated for the homicide of that young woman there, Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who went missing at the age of 13. And her body wasn't discovered until sometime later in the front trunk of his Tesla vehicle. And there's been a lot of reports on what state of decomposition her body was in, whether or not her body had been frozen, whether or not her body had been decapitated and dismembered, all sorts of awful things. Whatever it is, she met her demise by unknown means so far, at least not known to us, not being released by law enforcement. But there is a big development in this case. This case is kind of languished on with everybody wondering, when are we going to get some results? This has to be a homicide. Why isn't it being considered a homicide? Well, it is now considered a homicide. There are inside sources reporting to LAPD, and this is reliable enough because the lead investigator, in documents that he himself filed, affidavits he himself filed, refers to it as a murder, as a homicide investigation. So there's one. Two, a grand jury has been convened to investigate this case. You remember, grand juries can be used both to indict. They can also be used for investigative purposes because grand juries give the prosecution the power of subpoena. When you start a grand jury, you get a case number. When you have a case number, you have subpoena power. You can go to a judge and say, I want to subpoena these people into court to testify. I want to subpoena these documents, subpoena duces tecum. I want to get these documents into court. It gives you a lot of leverage and a lot of ability to put things on the record. And it can be a very, very powerful investigative tool. So this is being referred to as an investigative grand jury, not necessarily an indicting grand jury, but that doesn't mean it can't be both. If at the end of the day, they present enough to the grand jury that the prosecutors want to ask for an indictment, they can go ahead and do that. The other thing we're learning is that the prosecutor assigned to this case is someone you may be familiar with. Her name is Beth Silverman, an incredibly experienced and very aggressive prosecutor in the district attorney's office here in Los Angeles. She's part of what's called the Major Crimes Unit, which handles the most complicated and the most serious cases in the office. You also may remember her from the Monica Cementelli prosecution for the murder for hire execution of her husband, Fabio, and she was successful in gaining that conviction. Finally, some other little tidbits, getting back to the David/Celeste Hernandez case, is that we are being told the LA Times has confirmed through robbery homicide division of the LAPD, robbery homicide is their most elite division, that her body was not in fact decapitated and was not in fact partially frozen, which had been reported by certain outlets, namely TMZ, who actually doubled down on that. And they were saying that they had a source inside the medical examiner's office, and LAPD is saying just not true. My thinking on this is LAPD is not going to tell LA Times something, like deny something if it was in fact true, and they know that it's going to come out that it's true. Like, this is such a weird detail to get all controversial about whether or not her body had been decapitated or frozen, that you would think that if it were true, LAPD would say, we're either going to not talk about it, but to say, no, that is not a fact, we are denying that being true. They know that they're going to be embarrassed if that comes out that it is true. If you can follow kind of my reverse logic here. So in my view, the reporting by TMZ is based on bad sources, but that's where things stand right now. One last issue on this is that LAPD, in a very rare move, and I'm trying to tool this around in my head as to why they're doing this, and I haven't quite figured out strategically why. They are asking and have had it granted by a judge to have the medical examiner's findings under seal. So when those results come out, it will not be released in any kind of way. Why would they be doing that? Well, there's something about these results that they feel it being released to the public could somehow affect the integrity of their investigation. I'm really trying to figure out what that would be. I mean, I'm going through every kind of iteration in my mind right now, and I can't figure out what that would be exactly. I don't know. If you guys have ideas, please submit them to me. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got questions on any of these cases, I'd love to hear from you. In fact, let me just check if we've got any questions right now before I get moving on to the next case. Oh, well, here's a good one. Psychosaurus Rex says, my question is, why isn't anyone bothering with the fact that he fully admits to engaging in a relationship with a minor? That's just getting glazed over entirely, and it's weird. I agree with you, Psychosaurus Rex. I think the answer to that is less kind of controversial than you might imagine, because one, proving that crime is not what they're looking for, right? They want to know what caused her death. So getting kind of sidelined with, sexual assault, abuse of a minor, not that that's not serious, but I think they're most concerned with her death. Secondly, just from a logistics perspective, it becomes abundantly more difficult to prove that type of a case with her not being alive. So I think it's less about they're ignoring it or not concerned with it, and more about them trying to figure out if he's in fact responsible for her death. I can guarantee you this, Psychosaurus Rex, if they do indict him for her death, and they feel that part of the motivation for her murder was the fact that they were having this sexual relationship, you can be sure they're going to talk about that and explore that fully. And I'm sure they've been investigating it all along, but you're absolutely right. He did commit that crime. It does appear to, at least, we can kind of put our suspicions together, and it looks like that crime may have been committed for sure. I think they're just not allowing the tail to wag the dog, as it were. But great question. Well, Jimmy McNutty says statutory SA is like drugs in a murder case. Murder police don't care about drugs and don't care about SA. I don't know if they don't care about it. I think that it's just like they've got a bigger mission, and they don't, they're not going to release this piecemeal. I think, like I said, if it comes down to the motive behind all of this, was that SA, then they're absolutely going to put as much investigatory power behind that as they can. Alicia K. Mao says they denied her being frozen when found. Any word if she was ever frozen? Have we heard from the autopsy? So, yeah, I don't think that the LAPD is splitting hairs here. The answer to your question, Alicia K. Mayo from Humboldt, Tennessee, is that has not been answered directly. But I don't know if they would get down to the fine splitting of hairs and say, well, when I said frozen, I meant frozen at the time she was discovered, not that she was ever frozen. Also, we can imagine that at the time she was discovered, she was likely not in any kind of state of being frozen, because she had been discovered, they believe now, several weeks after her body had been abandoned. I'm just trying to piece all these things together, but there is some sort of mystery connected to the autopsy findings, what is being reported by these inside sources, and why LAPD doesn't want all that information out there just yet. Interesting stuff, though. But one thing we can safely say is a lot of momentum behind this case right now. It does not look like they're giving up on this, and it looks like the walls are starting to close in. So hopefully we will be getting some more solid, concrete news for all of you soon coming up. All right. Let's keep it rolling here. First of all, let me do some thanks to Farm Girl. Thank you so much for gifting a membership. That's so kind of you. Thank you for kicking us off this evening. Cody in Tennessee, always good to hear from you, for gifting a membership. Highly, highly appreciated. Ms. Nick 618 has been a member for 1 month, everybody. My first live, thanks to CC Crew for all of you guys do. Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm glad that you were able to catch a live. And Callahan, don't mouth. Tiffany's mouthing to me. I cannot read. Kalane, I don't know. Thank you very much for gifting a membership. I appreciate you as well, even though I can't pronounce your name. Jude the Tiger, I can do that much. Thank you for gifting a membership. Very kind of you as well. You guys have been fantastic this evening, and I appreciate every single one of you. All right, another thing that took place last week in a case that we've been following very closely that's still kind of advancing in the early stages of investigation is the Anna Kepner case from the young woman who's found dead on a Carnival Horizon cruise line in the middle of the Caribbean on November 7th of 2025. She was under her bed, wrapped in blankets and under a pile of life jackets. We do know, you guys, if you've been following this case, and we've told you about this already, that it does look like the suspect is her 16-year-old unnamed stepbrother, because there were filings done by her stepmother, Chantel Hudson, asking for more time in an unrelated divorce proceeding, saying that her son, 16-year-old son, was under investigation by the FBI. Connecting all the dots, we now believe that he is the 16-year-old under investigation for her murder. And I'm calling it a murder because initially this was being reported as just maybe being involved in, this kind of very weak attempt to hide her body. But now we do know, and this is interesting, another case where the investigators, it's the FBI because this took place on the quote unquote high seas. Another case where investigators are being very tight-lipped and not sharing a lot of information. So for them to share this piece of information is huge. They are now referring to this as a homicide because they have considered her cause of death to be quote unquote mechanical asphyxiation, meaning that they believed she was strangled to death. Other reports are surmising that may have been through an armbar type of situation, and that there was bruising perhaps around her neck. So now we know not some sort of accidental death, not some sort of narcotics-induced death, but also not a death through stabbing or shooting or something like that, but a death that was intentional by someone else's hands. I am guessing if they've zeroed in on one suspect, that suspect is most likely the person responsible because we're talking about a very confined environment on a ship in the middle of the ocean. It's not like a lot of people can come and go. And they've got surveillance cameras all over those ships. So they likely knew who was the last person to be with her. I also probably, if I'm going to speculate, imagine that they've spoken to the young man. Perhaps he's given some incriminating statements. Usually young folks are not that great at coming up with stories on the fly. And then the last thing I'll say about this is it is real bad news when you're talking about this kind of asphyxiation, because that doesn't take a matter of seconds. That is not, I lost my brain and in a moment of panic, I hit her and she fell over and hit her head on the hard tile floor of the bathroom and died. That is, it took me several minutes to kill her by strangling her while she struggled to save her own life. That's usually what that involves. Florida is a state where they can do what's called a direct file on a juvenile. So a person 16 years old accused of first-degree murder, they can just file that as an adult. I've spoken to some folks who practice criminal law in Florida, and they said, yeah, absolutely, this is the kind of case where they would. So we will see what happens. If it stays in federal jurisdiction, I don't think so. I think they'll probably hand this off to state prosecutors, and it might be that he's filed against as an adult. And we'll continue to keep our eyes on that one as well. Let me see if we have any questions on this one. Jojo Tink RN says, are they being tight-lipped because it involves minors? I think you're asking that about this case. Could also apply to the previous case, but yes, that could be part of it, but I also think that it's just when you're dealing with the feds, they are notoriously kind of tight-lipped and they just don't share a lot of information. Most law enforcement is that way. They don't like to, they're always, and listen, I don't blame them for it. I mean, I was that way when I was a prosecutor because you're not concerned with helping the public understand what's going on. You are concerned with getting the bad guy and getting a solid case. And anything that might even potentially jeopardize that, you're not willing to risk. Because the last thing you want to do is slip some information to a friendly source in media just to be helpful, just to give them some scoop, and that somehow backfires on you and exposes something and causes some problem in your investigation. Nobody wants that. So many times I don't blame them for all of this, but it does seem like in both of these cases, there's a lot of kind of hush-hush surrounding it. And Cody in Tennessee says, can the Coast Guard get involved in this? I don't think they would. I mean, it's the FBI's involved in it. Coast Guard is kind of more of a paramilitary, involved in kind of, I don't think they do a lot of investigation. The FBI is the federal investigatory arm. So they're the ones kind of heading this up. And that's only for the investigative purposes because it just doesn't fall into anybody else's jurisdiction. But the FBI can always hand off a case to whatever prosecuting agency. When I was a prosecutor in the DA's office, lots of times we would get federal rejects. It would be a case that they had presented to the AUSA. They said, "No, we're not interested." And then they would present it to us. So I would get a FBI worked up case, and they were always fantastic because they had way more resources to put into it than any other agency I dealt with. We were always like, they didn't want to file this? This is fantastic. You got wiretaps and undercovers on a drug buy? Oh my God, I'll take this. Anyhow. All right, let's move on. Another case out of last week. Interesting development on this one is the case of Shanna Gardner. This one's been languishing around for a long time. Just to catch you all up, Shanna Gardner, along with her new husband and now estranged new husband, Mario Hernandez, are accused of murdering her former husband, Jared Brightigan, back in February of 2022. It was a murder for hire plot. They hired a man by the name of Henry Tenon to ambush him on his way home, driving home in the middle of the highway. He shot him to death while his 2-year-old, oh, what a sweet picture, while his 2-year-old daughter was in her car seat and witnessed her own father being murdered. Police said that when they arrived, the 2-year-old was saying something like, "Daddy's hurt." It just breaks my heart. This case, for the longest time, we had talked about it being pursued as a death penalty case. Well, the prosecution announced last week that they are no longer going to be pursuing the death penalty in this case. Why is that? And is that a good or a bad thing if you care about getting justice for Jared Brightigan? I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's a bad thing. Do I think this is the type of case where you would oftentimes see the death penalty pursued? Yes. Murder for hire, murder for financial gain, incredible amount of planning, kind of cruelness involved in the fact that the murder is taking place in front of a 2-year-old. All of that are elements that you usually see in death penalty type cases. Here, though, one, death penalty cases take forever. They're incredibly complicated. They just make everything more difficult. So you really have to have the patience, energy, tenacity to see it through to the very end. And so it really better be worth it. But more importantly than that, you remember that this case, a lot of it hinges upon Henry Tenon, the third defendant, the co-defendant, who is the actual trigger man. They were going to flip him, and I still believe they intend to have him cooperate to testify against Mario and Shanna. He, a few months ago, had some issues where he was in court saying, I'm lying, it's false testimony, blah, blah, blah. They brought him back in. He's like, no, we had some confusion. I don't think they believe they have this guy as tightly tied up as they may have first thought. And while I don't feel that the case hinges upon him, in other words, I don't think it win or loss based upon him, I do think that he plays such a pivotal role that they don't want to bring a death penalty case based upon a very shaky, unreliable at best, co-defendant that they're going to give a deal to, by the way. I mean, he's looking at something less than life for a case where the other two, who are not the trigger men, would be looking at the death penalty. And that just creates a lot of kind of imbalance with appellate courts. And they look at that and they go, well, why did the trigger man get this good deal? And yet he's backing off of his testimony. And was he just willing to say whatever to get himself a good deal? And he's not even, and he's the one that pulled the trigger, and the other two are getting, I think they just kind of saw the writing on the wall and they said, you know what, let's take all of those issues away. Let's let's take away a lot of the thunder, steal a lot of the thunder of the defense here, and just proceed on getting a conviction here, and they'll go off to prison for the rest of their lives if they get a conviction out of this case. One last little wrinkle. This has got Jose Baez. He's a kind of big time defense attorney down there in Florida. He's done a lot of cases you guys have all followed. He's very aggressive. He's going to be defending Shanna Gardner, and that is expected to go to trial in August of 2026, which used to sound like it was a long time ago or far off. But now, as we know, 2026 is just 30 short days away, everybody. That's what's happening. Life is moving on at lightning speed. All right. What should I see? Do we have any questions here? Oh, well, first of all, let me thank Koala Ears OZ. Thank you so much for supporting mods with coffee. We appreciate that, Koala Ears. I think I've answered everything else, have I? And Potter 71, thank you so much for keeping our mods fully caffeinated. Appreciate that from you. All right, let's get to this week. So that was all last week. This week, the big news today is obviously that the Brian Walshe trial kicked off this morning. We've been waiting so long to see this gentleman in court finally trying to answer for us what exactly happened to his wife, Anna, back on New Year's Day of 2023 in Cohasset, Massachusetts. Now, you remember the last bit of fireworks and drama that took place on this case was just before he was going to start trial. He had 3 charges against him: first-degree murder, lying to police, and disposing of a body. They're about to start jury selection, and he says, "Your Honor, I would like to plead guilty to the lying to police and to the disposing of a body." And everybody promptly lit their hair on fire, going, what in the world is going on here? And everybody thought, this has got to be some trickery. What kind of 3D chess is the defense playing here? And what slick move are they pulling? And I thought about this long and hard. And I hate to do I told you so's, but I'm going to do a lot of I told you so's this evening, because everybody said, well, no, they're up to something. They're up to something here. They're going to somehow mess up the prosecution's case. I thought long and hard about this thing. And I think really what they did was they sat down and they looked at those Google searches. Google searches like, how do you dispose of a human body? How long before a body starts to smell? What are the best tools to dispose of a human body? I'm not doing exact quotes here, but it was things along those lines. And they said, okay, Brian, the worst that comes out of this is that you found a human body during the time that your wife went missing. But what this doesn't say is, how do you kill your wife? Best ways to kill your wife. Top 10 ways to murder your wife and get away with it. So it's not talking about murder. It's talking about getting rid of a body. So why don't we, Brian, be clever and just admit to that? Admit that you got rid of her body and admit that you lied to the police about it. And then we'll just say you're not responsible for her murder. And maybe upon maybe, it will give us the slimmest of slim chances of convincing this jury that you didn't commit murder in this case. And that's what they decided to do. But then the big question was, well, what are they going to say how he discovered her body? We all had some theories about that. Well, today we found out what that was. And I have to tell you, I'm less than impressed. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It was a really poor story. His attorney, in opening statements, his name is Larry Tipton, essentially said that they have this party, New Year's Day party. It was great. They had themselves a good old time ringing in the new year. He was looking forward to nothing more than going upstairs and getting into bed with the woman that he loved. And then all of a sudden, she had a sudden, unexplained death. And that he tried to rouse her and nudge her. And even in the nudging, she fell off of the bed. And then he panicked and, quote, what would happen to their 3 boys now that Anna is no longer there? What will happen if they think he did something bad to Anna? Where will those 3 boys go? The evidence you will hear will be hard to understand, but it's true. So here's where I would like to do the smallest bit of patting on my back is, one, that's a horrible explanation. I mean, they really had world of opportunities to present here, right? They're just presenting theories. They could have said accidental death. They could have said argument that turned violent, call it an involuntary manslaughter. They could, you know, she took too many pills, whatever. She's just dead in bed for no other reason and he panics. Horrible story. But the part that I would like to pat myself on the back was the invocation of the kids. Somehow I had this sneaking suspicion that he would try to use the kids as some sort of emotional tool. And that's what they're doing, is that, I panicked. The police are investigating me. I've got these legal troubles with the fraudulent Warhols I've been selling. They're never going to believe my story. And the kids, what would the kids think? What are they going to think when the mom's no longer here and all of this? So I decided to do a bunch of Google searches and chop her all up and dispose of her body all over Cohasset. I mean, it's just ridiculous when you take it beyond that one point. But that's the story that they're going with. I got to say, I really feel, and this is not what jurors should be doing, but I feel that this is one of those cases where jurors might have tuned out at that moment, just dialed back their interest at that moment, because that's just, it doesn't, you know what? You can understand panic. You can understand people doing crazy things. You can understand people lying to police. You can understand people being worried about suspicion, a bunch of things. But that's the reason that just doesn't compel anybody to get there. And then he's going to have to testify to that. I still think this puts him on the stand. He's still going to, they don't have a way of introducing that argument, because everything that his attorney just explained takes place between the 2 ears of Brian Walshe. He's going to have to be the one to testify to that. Prosecution, for their part, said, first of all, and the other reason I would like to pat myself on the back is it's all coming in. The lying to police, all of that's coming in. The disposing of her body, all of that's coming in. Like I said, it doesn't matter what you plead to. It matters what's relevant. And it's all relevant because it has to go to motive and his state of mind and his reason for this being a first-degree murder, not I discovered my wife suddenly and unexplainedly dead in bed. But the prosecution, they were going to struggle a little bit with motive. And they've got 3... it's kind of choose your motive game here. Their theories, and again, because this is not an element that they have to prove, they can't present these theories to the jurors. And by the way, the jurors don't have to agree on which theory. 4 of the jurors could agree on one theory, 4 of them could agree on another theory, and 4 of them could agree on the last theory, or they could agree on no motive because they don't need to prove motive. But here's their options. 1, he discovered an affair. And in fact, there is evidence that he was a little fixated on this affair because he apparently had Google searched the name of the person that she was having the affair with several times, over half a dozen times or so. 2, there is this theory that if he was the sole caretaker of the 3 children, that it would be harder for the federal court to put him into prison for the crimes that he committed, the art fraud crimes. That's some next level demented stuff, but that's another motive. And then finally, the last one is that he had 2.7 million reasons to kill her because that's what her life insurance benefits were, and he was in financial troubles as it was. So any one of those, I could see jurors wrapping their heads around. And like I said, they don't have to agree, and they don't even have to pick one because they don't have to prove motive. So It's going to be a wild ride of a case, and I think certainly much more interesting when the defense part of all of this picks up and when he eventually has to testify. And you can watch all of it, every minute of it, over on Courtroom Confidential Live Trials, our sister channel, which all of you, I think, should be subscribed to, where you can join all of your friends in the chat and watching every minute of the Brian Walshe trial. Let me see if I've got any questions here. How do you think the defense did with opening statements? Says Teresa Robinson. Well, I think it was... like I said, it just kind of sad. Lame. It was lame. It was not poorly performed. It wasn't poorly executed. It was poorly drafted. It was poorly. The problem wasn't in the directing or the cinematography. It was in the script. They needed a better story, and I don't know why they were hamstrung to that story. Unless Brian is just, no, that's what happened. That's what I'm going to testify to. And that's all he would testify to. But it just doesn't make it just doesn't make for a convincing, compelling argument to me. Ms. Annie K kind of asked the same thing. What do you think of the defense opening? Have you experienced a defense opening like this before? Sure. I mean, you run the gamut of wild defense arguments. But like I said, this one, we were all kind of expecting a little something that in my view, here's what Alicia K. Mayo says is, as greedy as Brian Walshe seems, if he didn't get murder her, don't you think he'd call for accidental death for possible double the life insurance payout? Good. That wasn't the question I thought it would be, but good point. If I were crafting his defense, I would say, listen, you've already admitted to doing some ridiculous stuff. Well, give them a reason. Give them a reason that makes it sound plausible as to why you lost your mind and hit her body. And that is, you've already admitted to enough crimes to put you away for a decade. Well, go ahead and admit to a little bit more and call it an involuntary manslaughter. Say you guys got into the worst argument. You confronted her about Don Juan, the affair. You said, I can't live this way anymore. And she came after me, and it got violent, and it got heated, and I hit her, and oh my God, I can't believe I did that, and tears and tears and tears. And I hit her, and then she fell down the stairs, and dear God, she died. And I thought, there's no one ever going to believe me that this was mutual combat and I was only defending myself, and things got out of hand. And so I hit her body. And people can go, oh, okay, yeah, you're kind of a wacky person, but maybe a juror or two might buy that. But this lifeless body. And my first instinct was not to call paramedics to try to save her. My first instinct was, where's my son's iPad? I got some Googling to do about how to dispose of her body and how long before I inherit insurance. As they say, good luck with that, sir. All right, another case, that big case that we've been following for a while. First of all, let me thank Star Shiny 99. Thank you so much for the super chat. Says, if they found her boots and purse in the dumpster, but yet she died in bed, I say guilty. Excellent point there. Also a rug, right? What's the rug got to do with it? Excellent point. Why are we finding these other items if she died in her bed? Unless she sleeps in boots. Cat Dubs has been a member for 14 months, everybody. Do you think the judge will allow his guilty plea in? It's the conduct that's irrelevant. And that's already been admitted essentially in opening statements. So the conduct of lying to police and the conduct of hiding her body is going to be allowed in. But will the actual criminal conviction and pleading to those things come in? That's up to the judge. And I could see a judge saying, no, we're not going to bring that in. That might unduly influence the jury. But he's also going to have to admit to that stuff on the stand. And if he doesn't admit to it for whatever reason, they might be able to impeach him by saying, didn't you in fact plead guilty to that? I could see that opening kind of a weird door for appeal. and prosecutors might try to avoid it as well. But excellent question there. A homicide detective's daughter, thank you so much for gifting a membership. Very, very kind of you. And CJ in LA, good to hear from you. Thank you so much for the super chat. Says, just a big virtual hug for the community. Oh, right back at you. Big squeeze right back at you. All right. Luigi Mangione. Luigi Mangione. He was back in court today. He's got a multi-day hearing. He is, of course, the man who's accused of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a New York sidewalk on December 4th of 2024. Snuck up behind him and just executed the man with a 3D printed weapon. Well, today he was in court with his attorneys, the dynamic duo and married couple of Mark Agnifilo and Karen Friedman Agnifilo. He's been receiving, by the way, which is just disturbing to me on many different levels, a tremendous amount of public support and financial support from the public to the tune of, I think it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, that he is now able to fund himself an incredibly experienced defense team in the Agnifilos. You remember Mark Agnifilo just got off of defending Sean Combs, who was looking to go to life in prison in federal court, and now he'll be out in just a few short years. So when you've got the same attorney as a billionaire music mogul, and you're, can't rub two nickels together, Luigi Mangione, because you've got all this public money and support, pretty wild times we're living in. But putting that all aside, those attorneys are fighting like heck on his behalf. And they won a big hearing not too long ago where they had the judge dismiss the terrorism allegation against him, which turned this from a life case, first-degree murder in New York, to second-degree murder in New York, which he's looking at as low as 15, but as much as life. Still a life case, but he could be eligible for parole in as little as 15 years. Huge win. Now their newest motions that we're hearing this week are motions to suppress based upon the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. In New York, they call them, the Fourth Amendment motion is called a MAP motion, and the Fifth Amendment motion is called a Huntley motion based upon those cases. So what is taking place here? Well, the Fourth Amendment motion, the MAP motion, has to do on items that were seized from him during his arrest. So he was arrested in Pennsylvania. He had a backpack. Inside the backpack was the gun, the 3D printed gun, along with a journal. The journal is more powerful evidence, in my view, than even the gun. The gun is huge, but the journal talks about his motivations, talks about targeting healthcare, talks about all of the kind of buildup to what would cause this, Ivy League educated young man to go out and just murder a figurehead type person, assassinate somebody. Just mind-blowing to me. So they're saying that they didn't have a warrant. That was a warrantless search, and therefore we want that evidence tossed. It's a violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, and we want that evidence tossed. They're also, under the Huntley Fifth Amendment argument, saying that the police talked to him quite a bit, and they asked him quite a bit of questions, and we want all of those statements that were made by our client kept out because those were abusive of his Miranda rights. He had not been advised of his rights, and therefore he shouldn't get any of that in. So this gets us a good opportunity to talk about both of those things. First of all, the Fourth Amendment has to always do with probable cause. Did the police have probable cause? And probable cause is a sliding scale, right? You can start out with reasonable suspicion, go all the way up to probable cause for arrest. There's, different levels in between there about what the police are allowed to do and how much kind of invasion of a person's Fourth Amendment rights are they allowed to make. Well, one of the things that happens is if you're going to make an arrest of someone, you are allowed to search that person incident to arrest, pat them down, including their belongings. And furthermore, if you are going to arrest someone and they have belongings on them, you're allowed to take them to jail and search their items for an inventory, because you don't let somebody take their backpack into their jail cell. You take that backpack, you inventory what's inside of it, and you hold that for them for when they're released. Both of those, I think, would apply here under the concept of sort of inevitable discovery, that even if they didn't have probable cause sufficient at the time of the actual search, they would have had probable cause sufficient after arrest and after his inventory search to have still recovered and discovered those items. Also, remember, and today in court, the 911 call made by the McDonald's manager was played in court. This was very, very important because the manager said to police, quote, "I have a customer here that some other customers here say he looks like the CEO killer from New York." Okay. So they're talking about, I've got a potentially armed and dangerous assassin sitting in my McDonald's. That goes to the surrounding circumstances and reasonableness of the officers and how they proceed. They're now not just talking to some beanie wearing loiterer at McDonald's. They're now talking to a potentially armed person. That allows for police to do some other things, some other kind of safety precautions for officer safety about what might be on his person and in his belongings. Also, when they make first contact with him, he provides a false ID. That gives them further suspicion because now he's not giving them his correct idea as to who he is. End of the day, I don't think this is a winning argument for the defense. And I've just been through too many of these, and I think that the prosecution's probably going to carry the day on this. Getting to the Fifth Amendment issue, what they call the Huntley motion, are the statements that he made to police. You guys are, I say this all the time, the smartest community on YouTube. So I'm sure that when we're talking about the Fifth Amendment and Miranda, I'm hoping these two words are going through your head the entire time. And those two words are custodial interrogation. That is the whole point of Miranda, is custodial interrogation. Remember, everybody thinks that Miranda is some sort of magic talisman, some sort of Harry Potter seance. I don't know. I never saw the Harry Potters, but you know what I'm talking about. Some sort of spell that they have to say before they're allowed to make an arrest or talk to anybody. Not true. Miranda only has to do with statements that you then want brought in to court. Okay. So police can arrest you. They can talk to you. They can interrogate you. They can do all that stuff, but they can't use those statements against you until you've been advised of your Miranda rights. But Miranda only applies to statements made under custodial interrogation. So what does that mean? One, you have to be in custody. And two, you have to be interrogated. So what is custody? Well, custody means that objectively you don't feel like you can leave. Okay. Are you in custody if police are just talking to you while you're enjoying your hash browns at McDonald's? I think there's some arguments to be made that not entirely so. If you're in the back of a squad car, that might be different. If you're back at the station, that might be different. If you're in handcuffs, that might be different. But just because police are talking to you doesn't necessarily make you in custody. There's one avenue. Police talking to you while you're not in custody, even asking you questions, not custodial interrogation, and Miranda doesn't apply. Interrogation is the other part of it. Are you being asked questions in furtherance of an investigation? So a casual conversation might not be interrogation. Voluntary statements made by Mangione are certainly not interrogation, even if he is in custody. If he's in handcuffs, under arrest, in the back of a squad car, and he's just blabbering his mouth off, Miranda doesn't apply. Custodial interrogation is what has to take place before you need to get concerned about Miranda. So as we go through all of that, you can kind of understand why the prosecution has a lot to argue in this case as to why they should be able to get a lot of those statements in. All right. Let me see if I'm missing any questions here. I don't think I missed any. That's because you guys already know all of this stuff anyways. All right. Let's get to the other cases for this week before we run out of time here. First of all, Tuesday, tomorrow, Mark Sanchez is going to be back in court. He is accused of felony battery resulting in serious violent injury out of the state of Indiana for an attack that took place on October 4th of 2025 against a 69-year-old man named Perry Toll. Look at him. Who's going to stab Perry? Or why is Perry carrying around a knife? Looks like the nicest guy in the world. Well, Mark Sanchez, 6 foot whatever, 200 and something pounds, decided to get into it with Perry, and he made the biggest mistake of his life. He's also been charged with misdemeanor battery, misdemeanor unauthorized entry of a vehicle, and public intoxication. He's back in court, but trial's not going to happen anytime soon. Trial is set for March of 2026. I imagine this thing will drag on forever till they work out some sort of deal where, you know, Mark Sanchez goes on some sort of mea culpa campaign and gets himself out of jail time. Though I think you do that to a person, put him in the hospital, you should be looking at some jail time. On Thursday, Jennifer Gledhill. This is a case that we followed a while back. I find this case to be fascinating. We actually did a kind of quasi miniature case notes, a deep dive, if you will, on this case that we'll give you the link to, called Off With Their Heads. We're very proud of that thumbnail title there. Because this woman is accused of murdering her husband, Matthew Johnson, who is a Utah National Guard member. They had 3 children together. There they are, always with the happiest pictures. Whenever you see these really, really happy family pictures, it always spells certain doom. Back in September of 2024 in Cottonwood Heights, Utah, she shot him while he slept in bed, and then it went about admitting the murder to her lover, who is still unnamed. She said that she shot him, and then she packed him up in a storage container that one would put on top of their car, drove that out to a location, dumped it in a river. His body has never been recovered. And in fact, he, at one point, the lover, recorded a conversation with her where she talks about the murder, and that's where the whole Off With Their Heads thing came from. She says, quote, "I've always preached that I was like the Queen of Hearts in my past lives because I'm like off with their heads." That case will be back in court, like I said, on Thursday for kind of further pretrial hearings, a case that I'm looking, very interested in following as it gets closer to trial, because it's a no body case. It's got some interesting elements. There's this lover who's going to be a key figure in the whole thing. Just a really, really wild case that we will continue to keep our eyes on. Oh, yeah. Not to mention mom and dad also got arrested. There's mom, Thomas and Rosalie Gledhill. I'm not going to say anything mean, but they look like they could be trouble. That's all I'll say. All right. Also this week is Courtney Clenney. Courtney Clenney is the OnlyFans/Instagram model who's accused of murdering her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, back in April of 2022 in Miami, Florida, stabbing him to death. There has been ongoing defense motions regarding prosecutorial misconduct in the accessing of documents and iCloud accounts, young blood violations, if you know, you know, the bond hearing. All of that should be argued. Hopefully, the judge had set a deadline for this Friday, at least for all their briefing on those arguments to be submitted. This case is taking a long time, says Moments in Trading. It's taking a very long time. And part of that is to do with this prosecutorial snafu that took place where they looked at some stuff they shouldn't have looked at. But even given that, 2022, 3 years for this thing, and getting on 4 years now, and we still haven't set a trial. Yeah, taken way too long. So anyhow, hopefully we'll get some more developments on that this Friday. And another case coming back this Friday that's been around forever is Kouri Richins. She's, of course, accused of murdering her husband, Eric Richins, back in March of 2022 in Camas. I know I said that wrong. Is it Camas, Utah. She put allegedly fentanyl in his Moscow Mule. You remember there's been a lot of issues in this case. They wanted to move it out of the county. There was some issues about whether or not one of the key witnesses is recanting, back and forth. Really good judge on this case, Richard Mrazek. I think he's been making a lot of the right decisions. But she also has a financial crimes case. So in the investigation of Kouri for her husband's murder, they found out that probably part of the motive for all of this was that she had been, embezzling money and taking part in a bunch of shenaniganery with her finances. And they charged her with a bunch of financial crimes, but those are being handled separately and appropriately so. So her initial appearance on that case will be this Friday. But again, snail's pace with this case moving forward. One interesting article came out on this. The state of Utah has spent $500,000 on this case so far, and they are asking in their latest budget for an additional $500,000 to see it through to the end. And part of the reason that went up is that she initially had a private attorney, ran out of money for that attorney, and now has appointed a public defender, which is not really a public defender. It's been appointed by the state, who is this woman whom I'm blanking on her name, but she also represents Tyler Robinson. So she's got a very, very full docket. What is her name? Come on, everybody. Kathy Nestor, says Kaylin. Kaylin knows everything. Kaylin knows everything. She's giving me the duh look. All right. That's it for this week. That's everything that's coming up. I think I answered all your questions. Let me do one last. Yeah, I got everything out of the way, I think. All right. Let me give you some quick announcements and then get you guys out of here. But before we do that, please pause for one quick moment for a very quick word from our sponsor. I don't know if you've seen the news lately, but there are reports that over 183 million email passwords have been leaked online, including Gmail. This means that hackers can not only get into your Gmail account, but they could get into any account linked to that account, including shopping sites, banks, and subscriptions, you name it. As someone who uses Gmail every day, I worried, obviously. But then I remembered I'm protected by our sponsor, Aura. Aura provides full digital security so you can feel safe even when leaks like this happen. You get dark web alerts, bank fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance all in one app. Try Aura free for 14 days right now. Just go to aura.com/courtroomconfidential. It's free to try, it protects you, and it helps support the show. All right, guys. Have you heard about a little website called thecourtroomconfidential.com? If you haven't, you should check it out. There's 3 things that you will find there. You will find about messages, memberships, and merch. First of all, every Sunday we have an episode that we do here at Courtroom Confidential called Sunday Fun Day, except this last Sunday, it was on Saturday. But every Sunday, other than the Sundays we miss, and the Sundays we do it on Saturdays, we have Sunday Fun Day, where we answer your questions. Well, how do you leave us a question? You leave us a message at thecourtroomconfidential.com, and we will answer them live every Sunday. Membership. A lot of membership handed out this evening. Thank you to everybody for your generosity. If you would like to become a member and learn about all of the benefits, go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on Become a Member, and you can find out about all of our different membership perks. And merch. Click on the shop, and you can find out about our holiday merch, all of the new colors that we have available, including this one, which Project Band Shirt loves the shirt today. I love it as well. It is very suspicious. That's cute. Very suspicious is very cute. What else do we got? Cherry plum custodial interrogation. Okay, that works as well. Custodial cranberry. Very good. Perjury plum. Clever. Very clever. And Therapist says mauve to dismiss. I feel like Therapist just sits around with notebooks on this stuff, but very clever. What is it? What is it? Poisonous tree plum, says Pammy. Just what? Red, off red, whatever it is. It's part of our new colors. We got these brand new fall colors plus all of the other ones that you're used to. Miranda Midnight Mauve. What is it called, Tiff? She always makes us wait forever on these things. It's never good. I don't even know why I ask. All of those names are better. But berry. Well, if you like berry, you can buy berry at the shop. Plus, we got a bunch of other holiday merch for you. We've got new sweaters. We've got new T-shirts. We've got a bunch of different, what is it called? Glassware, cupware, drinkware. All the stuff that you would like, all the stocking stuffers that you would like for this holiday season are available at the shop at thecourtroomconfidential.com. Finally, what did you miss this weekend? Well, we did have Sunday Fun Day, but we had it on Saturday because I was on an aeroplane on Sunday, but we still had a great time. We talked about Melody Buzzard, a lot of questions about her, a lot of cases about Brian Walshe. But if you're interested in those cases and many others, check out. Please watch it on replay. It's always still fresh. It's already up on our channel. Then finally, stay tuned this week. Like I said, on our sister channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials, we'll give you the link. We are following every single day, gavel to gavel, the Brian Walshe trial. So tomorrow is day 2. Day 1 was already exciting. We will be following every single day of that, and I will, as much as I can, whenever I get a moment to breathe, be popping in there to say hi and give you all my thoughts if I don't catch you up on all of them in the evening time. And then you get to spend all day with your friends chatting about the case. And it's the best chat in the world, don't you know? That starts at every morning, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, I think is the schedule going to whenever court closes that day. Wednesday, we will be back with Wednesday Night Live, and our special guest is going to be Joel Waldman from Surviving the Survivor, and I imagine we're going to be talking quite a bit about Brian Walshe and some whatever other developments there are in the news. That will be at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, back here on the channel. Friday, 2 things for you on Fridays now. You get 2 kind of weekly roundups for you every Friday. First, at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. If you go to Fox Nation is the streaming channel for Fox. There is a new weekly show out. We had our premiere episode last Wednesday, but now it will be regularly released at Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern. That is noon Pacific, and it's called The Weekly Rap Sheet. It's hosted by myself, Paul Morrow, and Donna Rotuno. And we take questions too. So please email us your questions. This week, the cases we're covering include Anna Kepner, Luigi Mangione, Brian Walshe, and Kouri Richins. If you have a question on one of those 4 cases, again, Anna Kepner, Luigi Mangione, Brian Walshe, and Kouri Richins, please email us those questions at theweeklyrapsheet@fox.com. I want to say something. Last week, when we had our first episode and we were trying to kind of gin up some interest in asking questions, they had asked us to send this out to our respective communities to get them to ask questions. And I was very pleased when they said, by the way, Josh, We got a lot from you and Courtroom Confidential. So thank you guys so much for that support. And thank you for running deep and strong with Courtroom Confidential. And in fact, one of the questions we did ask was from, I think it was from Kathy here, was the question that we asked on the premiere episode. And she sent a lot of juice box along with it. So that was very cute. And I appreciated that little touch. So this week, please leave us another question. We'd love to hear from all of you. I want them to know we run strong every week. Then when you're done watching that on Fox Nation, go back to Courtroom Confidential on YouTube, and at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, we will have our live weekly roundup, also covering a lot of cases taking place this week. And then we're back Sunday with another Sunday Fun Day at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And that's it. That's everything you got going on this week. Let me give some special thank yous to our new members: Allison Vandenberg, Winter Sun, Stay Some, Whisk Brand, Maybe Megan, Maybe Not, 007 Spy Chick, AZ Aspen GMA, Linda P. Golan, 7070, Psych Nerd, 95, Lori Lackey, Malika, CE314, Mary Wilson, Janet Norris, CW1971, Sarah D. Irish, Humankind, Ms. Yorkie, Yorkie's mom. I don't know, did they plan that together? I don't know. Puppies and Pizza, Darlene 9529, Kathy Villarreal, I'm What I Create, Lois Lane 856, Tanya Utterback 7236, Sleuth GT, and I Love Sarcasm. You guys are all fantastic. Thank you so much for becoming members of this channel that we work so hard at, and try to make it something that you will all enjoy. And I thank you all so much for showing up every single time, and for all of your support and kind words. Special shout out to Afton, Shy Gal, Kathy, and Therapist You Know for being our incredible mods and keeping us all happy, and to Kaylin for making everything run so smoothly, and to Tiffany for being the best thing that ever happened to me. You guys are fantastic, and we will see you back here again on Wednesday evening. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.